the showcase, baby. The showcase, righteous minds, it's your time to shine, the showcase, righteous minds, it's your time to shine, the showcase.
Greetings. Welcome back to the showcase. My name is Rashid Hafiz, and I'm here with the CEO of SABREE Brothers LLC. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show. Can you please let the people know, or I guess studio owners know, a little bit more about yourself and SABREE Brothers LLC?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me on, Brother Rashid. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of SABREE Brothers LLC. And SABREE Brothers LLC is a multi-production company, meaning that we are a company that is primarily focused on developing film, making films, but we also are trying to expand into the realm of theater. We want to do theater productions, television productions, and radio, and of course, obviously, the internet. So basically, any of these areas where scripted work or for entertainment is involved, that's where we're trying to get involved in. My brother Hakeem Sabree is the president and the second co-founder, and we had started our company back in 1997. Essentially, we made a couple of short films, and we're recently working now on a one-act play that we're taking around to help raise funds for the other projects that we want to do. Okay. So that's basically what the company is. It's a family-owned company, and we employ just 2 people right now, and so we do pretty much everything. And occasionally, every once in a while, we'll bring on some other people to do camera work or lighting and stuff for some of the productions. But we're a small company, and we're trying to expand, and that's basically what we do.
Okay. Now, what was the impact in your lives? Meaning that, was there a particular event in time that focused your energy into film? Like, what was that big light bulb that says, this is what we want to do?
That's an interesting question. My brother and I, like most people, grew up watching film, but our first introduction to film actually was on television. I was born in 1964, and my brother was born in 1966. And we grew up watching television, and there used to be a show on in the early 80s, late 70s, called The Late Late Show. It was on television, and it basically was a television show that came on late at night that would show old movies. Basically, old movies mean movies that were made in Hollywood during what the period referred to as the Golden Age, of a period between 1929 to 1949. And they showed Casablanca and Gone with the Wind and Double Indemnity and anything that you could think of as being a classic film. They would show it on late night. We were watching because our mother basically grew up watching those films, and that was our first introduction really to film. Before we went to the movies, we saw it on television, and we saw these films. So that was our first introduction to film, was the classic films of Hollywood. And we liked what we saw. We thought the stories were well done. We liked the black and white imagery. We liked the characters, the music. I mean, everything about what is referred to as the golden age of film is legitimate. I mean, it really was the foundation of what has become American film, and the system, the Hollywood system that they talk about, had been refined by that time in that period. So we just were entranced by it. And then when we had the opportunity to get older and go out and to physically go to films and see films, that early impression of what we saw stuck with us.
Okay.
And I remember one of the first films I actually saw when I started to go to film was a movie called Superman the Movie, with Christopher Reeves in about 1979, 78, 79. And it was a great experience. I mean, the tagline for the movie was "You believe a man can fly," and it was one of by that time they had technology had gotten up to the ability of making flight on film work a lot better than it did years ago. And when you saw the film, it was incredible. It was a great experience. The casting was great. The storylines were wonderful, and the special effects worked to enhance the story. Okay. So it was there. I think the bug was put in. But it wasn't really until like later in our lives that we really decided to make it a more consistent effort. So like I said, we started the production company in 1997, but we had started watching film again back in the late 70s. So the thing that really pushed us over the top to say, well, it's time for us to make, if we want to make films, we have to do it ourselves, was that as watching films, we saw a lot of things that we liked about film, a lot of things we didn't like. And, you know, like most people, when you watch a film, you don't like it, you complain about it, talk to your friends about it, say, that was bad, they're gonna do better. And realize that if we wanted it done the way the kind of films we wanted to see, the kind of films that we grew up with when we were kids, that had the big effect on us, that we would have to do it ourselves. Okay. So we didn't see that being done, but we recognized that if it was going to happen, we would have to do it ourselves. So that's the big catalyst in the late 90s that made us decide, we have this interest. Let's try to make it something concrete, and let's try to make something go forward. I think that probably about 1997 was probably our first short. It was a little after that.
Okay.
So
now, as a director, film creator, what makes a film like the best in your mind? And even when you're editing your stuff, you and your brother, when you watch it or read the script or watch something on TV, what makes it memorable? What makes it really like a great film?
That's a very good question. Film, like any creative process, is to a certain extent subjective. I mean, there are times that you'll go to a film with friends and you'll watch the film and you'll come out saying, that was okay. Yeah. And your friends will say, wow, that was great. I was like, so to a certain extent, what makes a film great is subjective. There's not a hard and fast formula, and you can break down and say, okay, this makes a great film and this does not. However, there are certain elements that are true of all great films. Something that there's a thread that runs through them. The first is the story. Okay. That's the bottom line. That's one of the things everybody who knows anything about film, all the people you hear talking about films, the good directors, is the story. What's the movie about? And oftentimes when you find a movie that you don't like, it's because of the story. It's not the special effects. The special effects are fine. The actors are fine. But then you just come away, it's like something just didn't work there. You can't really even express it what it is. The average person can't really express it. But if you go back and you examine it, if you could do that, you'd recognize it's the story. Something about the element of that person telling the tale visually through that medium wasn't true. Something about it was weak. Mm-hmm. And you'll find it's rarely ever the acting. Sometimes it's the acting. Sometimes it's the technology. But most often it's the story. Okay. And so for us, when we decided we were going to make film, we had to recognize there had to be a foundation for us. And the foundation for us was, if you told a story about virtues, stories about courage. Courage has no boundaries, no limitations in the world. There's no such thing as Japanese courage or Puerto Rican courage or African American courage. Courage is courage. Everybody recognizes it when they see it on the screen or any medium. And if you read it in a book, you know courage. Justice, again, that's nothing. There's no group of people or any time period that has a distinction or refined boundary on justice. So these things transcend culture. They transcend time. Okay. So if you build and make films based around those ideas, you can reach the broadest audience because everybody can identify with it. Everybody has a concept of faith and hope. Those ideas, everybody recognizes them when you see them on screen. So those are the kinds of things like for us. I mean, like the films that we like. I think about It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, 1946 Frank Capra film. And it's a standard holiday film that everybody shows every Christmas. But that's the reason why they do it every Christmas. That's the reason why that film, done back in 1946, still keeps being brought back into the 21st century.
Okay.
The foundation of it is family. The foundation of it is a faith in the goodness of human beings. The foundation of people believing that if you work together and help each other, support each other, great things can happen. And that, again, that resonates with everybody. Everybody recognizes family. Everybody recognizes pulling the concept of pulling together and working. So that storyline works, and that's why generation after generation, that movie, it'll never stop being shown. As long as as long as there's film, as long as we have an interest in people wanting to see film, that movie will go on. And that's the kind of the films that we want to do. We want to make films that have those core values that will always be recognized, and people will always want to see them because they're universal.
Okay. As a filmmaker, do you feel that it's the job of the director or the producer or the person who's putting the film together to really, how do I say, have a responsibility to really give culture to people, or should we just take whatever's out there and say, well, this is what's hot, so let's build on that? What is your ideas on that?
Well, to express that, I would have to go back to our foundation, and that is that my brother and myself, we were born, initially, we were born in the Nation of Islam, under the leadership of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we were raised always to believe that we had an obligation as African Americans, or black people as we were referred to back then, to do good for our people, for ourselves and for our people. That we could not escape or pass off the responsibility of what needed to be done for our people to recover from the experience of slavery to anyone else. That was our responsibility as African American people, African Americans who we called ourselves Muslims at the time under his leadership, and that was the core essence of what is our upbringing as a people, as a family. That it is our obligation, particularly as African Americans, to do what we can and should to make a life better for ourselves, but not just us as individuals, but the group picture. We were always made conscious of the fact that slavery put us down as a race. We were put down as a race, not as individuals. And the only way we're going to rise is as a race, not as individuals. There are individuals among us who are, right now, who are very successful individuals, but as a whole, the image of us, the African American people, is not very positive in the world. Okay. And so we feel that everybody who's African American has an obligation, but we can't obviously force other people who are in film or in other mediums to do that, but we're going to take on our responsibility. What we know and understand that God's given us an insight into is to recognize that we're only going to all benefit better and more if we, as a group, work consciously to make films, make productions in television and theater and music that will make us become more responsible and have more pride in ourselves as a group. So I feel absolutely that we have a responsibility to affect the culture in a positive way. I mean, it's very easy and very simplistic to simply say, well, give the people what they want. Well, the trick to that question is, how do you know what people want? If you continuously feed people crap, if you continuously feed people bad music, bad films, they digest it, and so they're just used to it. It's like eating bad food. If that's all you have to get, then of course you think that that's what you need to survive. But until somebody gives you some good food, that's different, that's healthy, that makes you feel better, you don't recognize that you need something better. So just to say that you need to give people what they want, you have to ask yourself, well, what is it that they have that would make them want bad stuff? It's the fact that you've been giving them bad stuff. Okay. So if we give them good films, good music, good entertainment that is well done, well produced, and that encourages us to have a better sense of pride in ourselves, well, of course we'll want that more. I think our people will be more inclined to want that, and the rest of the world, again, will have more respect for us as a group when they see that we're being more consistent in trying to help ourselves, not always asking other people to do things for us. As an African American, certainly as a Muslim African American, I could not think of doing anything in the world where I didn't have that concept that we have to do for self. That concept that was drilled into us in the Nation of Islam still is with us now, and so absolutely we have a responsibility to our people to only do good.
Okay. Islamic history hinders you or make you more successful?
That's a very good question. I certainly, again, what was one of the blessings of having been raised in the Nation of Islam was the sense of community life, community. We never at any time felt, we knew that about racism. We were aware of it, and we were fed off of it to help bring in our people to us as a group. But we, unlike many of the other African American groups, didn't feel that we could not succeed in spite of that. Mm-hmm. That even though racism was there and white supremacy was abundant, and we knew, and the people who were the founders of the Nation of Islam grew up in the 1930s, knew about the lynchings, and some of them actually experienced these things. Never in our consciousness was there a belief that we could not succeed as a people, despite the fact that if people knew we were African American, which was the bigger concern. And seeing now with the name of Mustafa and my brother's name Hakeem, we don't see that as being a hindrance, even though right now there's a negative image of Muslim in the world, that certain names and terms are being spouted out there in a negative sense. And unfortunately, and we have to admit this, there are many people who claim to be Muslim who are helping to feed that lie, who are helping to feed the negative image that people have in America and around the world about Muslims. It's not just people who have an agenda of trying to undermine Islam or Muslims, but unfortunately it's behavior of many of the people who claim to be Muslim. But we have always believed that as Muslims, the obligation is to do good work. As an African American, that's my first priority, is to do it for my people. But as I said before, if you promote a film about courage and you have African American actors and actresses in it, European Americans, Asian Americans, Latin Americans are going to appreciate it, are going to enjoy it, because courage, again, it's not something that is distinct for any particular group. Everything that we do, we believe, can have a greater impact on the greater society, even though we're just using our own group as the example. And I use the example of the European Americans. In Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood, from 1929 to about 1949, there were, only time we had the African Americans in these films where we were supporting characters, we were supporting persons, and always either entertainers, buffoons. They give us caricature image. And so the majority of the films that had the lead roles were European American. Now again, I as an African American, knowing about the history of racism in this country, still can enjoy Casablanca. Casablanca is one of my favorite films of all time. And though I recognize watching the film that there's the racist element there, I can still appreciate it as a good film. The story is still good. It's still and what helps me do that is having a sense of a independent self-worth. I believe as an African American, I don't believe that I'm inferior to any other group of people. So I can appreciate European American people making good films and quality films without saying, well, I can't like that film from the 40s because they were racist back then. Well, I mean, that's like saying I can't eat food from the 1940s because it was racist back then. Everything about that environment perpetuated a racist ideology. Okay. But I can still respect and look at a film from that period and say, hey, that's a good film. It has a good story. I like the characters, the acting, it's fine. All the good stuff about it I can take out and say, I can utilize that. And I can recognize that the poison of racism was there, but that's not going to undermine the quality of a film and make it good or bad. What helps in the films that we're trying to do And right now, for example, we last film we did, we actually did a short called initially it was called The Courage of the Few, and we changed it to The Good Conspiracy. And basically, it was a short excerpt of a larger film. It's going to be an epic film that we're working on in the future called Universe City. And so we've just shot a little excerpt of it, and we called it The Good Conspiracy. And basically, it's a story of a group of African American students in this college that takes place in the future, who have established almost like sort of a Harvard-like university of African Americans, and there's been some corruption going on. And the students have come together to try to find out a way to help retain the school's qualities and identity, get rid of the corrupt people, but still retain the best elements of that school. I think people around the world can identify that. If you go to school, if you go to college, if you go in a university, and you know that there are problems that happen in universities and problems with that life, and you as a student want to make it better, they can identify with that. So these concepts that we're doing these films, we believe that it will, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, transcend race. You know, I think that obviously people are going to recognize that these are African Americans in these films, but that the value system that they're promoting will make people engage more so than it will deter them from it. Okay. And again, in terms of just to being Muslim, as Muslim, we believe that Muslim is a universal concept. It's not particular to any group of people. And there's no such thing as, again, Muslim courage or Jewish courage or Christian courage. Courage is courage. Yeah. And if you identify with courageous people and just people want justice, people want equality, you identify with the films that we're trying to make. One of the great assets to filmmakers and anybody in production creativity is the internet. Yeah. So one of the things that the internet has done is, whereas before that time, if you were making a film or anything, you had to go through a limited group of people. There were certain film production companies that were out there, and they sort of determined whether or not you would ever get your film seen, distributed, because they had control of the assets that would make that happen. With the internet, the average person, for good or for bad or worse, for good or bad, can have their idea spread across the world by the internet. They can just get on, have a camera, set it up, shoot something, and shoot out in the airwaves, and the whole world sees it. So there's no boundary for what a person does to be seen by the world. You have, as in anything you do, you have very little control over how people are going to perceive what you do. You try to do the best you can. We believe that the core ideas that we have in terms of having good production, we always want to have the best music, the best technology that's being used now. I understand now that obviously the digital format is the way to go now in terms of as opposed to actual film making. I understand that some of the production companies are actually going to even stop making films at all. They're just going to go to everything's going to be digital. So the digital medium is a technological advancement. But again, they're just tools. That's all they are. Okay. I mean, that's just what's out there. And right now, it's really the best and the worst time for filmmakers. And I say that because with the internet is like people talk about cable television right now. It's like 1,000 channels but nothing's on. Yeah. What they mean is that these channels have these shows on, and when you click and go through them, there's nothing of interest to people, it seems. I mean, how can you have 1,000 channels and nothing be interesting on it? Well, that's the way it is right now. It's almost like a level playing field. Everybody has a chance to put their idea out there. Okay. And if you get the audience, like if you do something and put it on YouTube, and somebody gets like 1,000 hits, even for some things are stupid, in my opinion, become very popular, it's very possible that something that's good can do the exact same thing. Yes. I mean, you have no control over it. We can't make people like them. But I do believe inherently, we do believe as a company, that if we have high standards and we put forth a good production that's well consistent, good story, good values, that there's an audience out there for them. That's the bottom line.
Now, do you guys have any upcoming screenings or upcoming plays that maybe someone who want to actually see one of your like live performances or come to a live screening? Do you have any one of those coming up soon, or that someone can contact you or come and see? Or
Well, we do have a website, SabreeBrothers.com, and we're currently working on trying to get a ongoing production of a play that we're doing. We're doing, as I mentioned before, a short called The Sentinel and the Showman. It's a story about two friends. One's an agent, one's an actor, and they're basically trying to get this television script produced. And it's basically sort of a story about the challenges that they have to endure to make decisions of how they're going to proceed. You know, what kind of life they want to have, how they're willing to compromise, or what they're willing to compromise to be successful. And so that's what we're working on right now, to try to raise the money to have this production done. We're trying to gear it towards the spring. Obviously, right now there's been a lot of snow and winter, so we're spending this time right now in the winter building up a fund financing to be able to put the play on a more consistent basis in the spring. So we'll update our website, and we have a place on Facebook that we'll post when we actually are ready to start having regular productions.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Once again, this is Brother Rashid with the Showcase. See you next show. Great day when we have someone as fine as yourself on the show. For those who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a musician, a composer, band leader, and I produce my own CDs, and I'm also an author.
Okay.
Last year I worked out a deal with a publishing company called Layla Publications, and released a Sufi science fiction novel.
Okay.
And so between that and my music, that's pretty much what I've been doing. In fact, if you don't mind, this is a copy of my book, and it's available through LaylaPublications.com. It's also available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. It's an interesting story. I'd like to think so.
Okay. So, the music that you do, we have a few clips we're going to show people in a little bit, but explain to us, for those who are new to watching you, the science behind your music.
Well, I call what I do world jazz, or I suppose world jazz electronica. Basically, despite the fact that it is at times necessary to label and categorize the music that I do, I draw from